Hi there, my name is Kay Moon and I'm a twin flame channel and Western astrologer. And this is a video about the full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse taking place on October 28th at 4:15 p.m. If you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States, please check a time zone converter for your local time. This will be the video update for twin flames, divine counterparts, soulmates, etc., etc., etc. Okay, couple of quick announcements before we get all the way into this. For those of you who've been curious about learning astrology with me, my signature program for doing that called Star School will open up next month, and this year will include limited spots for private mentorship that will be application only. You will need to know some astrology to be able to participate in that program. More details to come. I am also booking readings for the month of November. I'm really excited to chat about what to expect and how to prepare for 2024 and how to integrate the lessons of 2023. So if you need some support before we close out this year, and while this eclipse energy is active through the end of January, now would be the time to get on my calendar. And lastly, if you're new to the channel, welcome. This particular Twin Flame Divine Counterpart Collective update functions as a part 2 to the Lightworker energy update, which is published at the same time as this one on the channel and is more of a part 1, gives you a deep dive and full context of these energies. This particular video will only provide a little bit of information about the movement of energy between those who consider themselves divine counterparts or activated by divine love in the collective. Okay, let's get into it. We have the full moon right here in Taurus at the 5th degree. Speaking in harmony with Jupiter, it is conjunct and in opposition to some friends over here in Scorpio, Mars, Mercury, Sun, and Haumea, creation goddess, ego structures, consciousness, and motivation. We also have a sextile to Vesta here in Cancer, so bringing our emotions into the mix, a trine to Juno here in Virgo, bringing imbalanced power dynamics into the mix, a square to Pholus in Capricorn, which is showing us where those imbalanced power dynamics may have caused some problems for us personally, square to Chariklo in Aquarius. This is illuminating where we have divine support for rectifying the situation. And this Jupiter in Taurus is making sure we cannot miss it. Okay, so what's interesting about this is when you put all these pieces together, it's really revealing where we have opportunity to change things based on wanting to get into better agreement with our power, better agreement with our personal value, self-worth, self-esteem, and where there's a necessity to close things out. I talked about in the Lightworker energy update how this is a quadruple closure and why that has fostered an energy of such significant heaviness or drag or tiredness and fatigue for the collective, and when that's going to start to ease and what you need to do to get that to ease inside of your life and your particular orbit. So if you need some help understanding that, my strong recommendation would be to have a look at the Lightworker energy update first and then come on back to this so that you can understand why the energy between the divine counterparts, Jupiter and Juno, husband and wife of the zodiac, is playing out the way that it is playing out between them. Okay. Let me see here. Get to where my notes live. There they go. All right, so because this particular cycle is all about closing out cycles of imbalanced power dynamics, where we have been either undervaluing ourself or the connection. Those are the themes that are going to come to the surface for those activated by divine love during this particular lunation. Imbalanced power dynamics where we've been undervaluing ourselves or the connection can play out in a number of ways. It could also be undervaluing ourself in the connection and what we contribute. All of that is starting to come to completion and closure over the next 90 days. It ramped up in intensity in the preceding 90 days. We're at the peak window of intensity right now, between November 25th and September 25th, at 30 days either side of this. And what I really love about this is because Jupiter and Juno are working in tandem. They're both in earth signs. They're harmoniously placed to one another. This is going to illuminate in the third dimension. Earth signs are third dimension. Fire signs are spiritual dimension. But in the earthly realms, this is really going to illuminate like the specifics. It's going to illuminate behaviors, actions, agreements, structures, patterns that have come together to formulate being either undervalued as a pair, undervalued individually, undervalued in the connection. This is going to ask us to pull things into balance at this time by exposing in the third dimension where things are out of balance for both counterparts, truly. And this, I got to be honest, this is likely going to be a little bit uncomfortable, as I mentioned in the Lightworker energy update, but the discomfort has purpose. It's to move us and evolve us, bring us through the birth canal out on the other side to our rebirth. And it's really to help us, it's kind of to force our hand around some of the required conversations because Mercury is so heavily involved in both counterparts' energies. It's directly opposite Jupiter. It is sextile the divine feminine energy. Mercury is consciousness and communication. From Scorpio, it's all about depth with that, research with that, bringing the receipts, as the children say these days. And so there's really this energy and invitation of like consciousness and communication, awareness and thoughtfulness about what we need. And this is really going to be a perfect time in connection to, number one, ask for what you need. Number two, stay curious and open to what someone you love is asking for. And number three, to be in communication about how it could look if it were to look different than it looks now. So I really love to see this. I'm seeing it a lot in my practice. I've been sharing it on the channel with folks. Like I'm seeing a lot of breakthroughs happen in connection between people who have been out of communication, now getting into communication, people who have been in communication, now taking that communication to the next level. I'm seeing people who have had, sort of challenges in the way that they've organized their connection, really shift that. We're going to talk about more of that in a minute because there's some real shifts in connection going on in this energy that may be a little startling if you're not expecting it. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I like this energy because it gives us an invitation to work with it, not just in the spiritual realm. There's a video I did last year called Twin Flame Sexual Activation. And in that video, I really talked about the way my guides showed me the energetic movement of initiation through the chakras via when you get activated by the connection. And so the energetic movement for many, not all, for many this is personal, but for a lot can move up, out, and around through the bioenergetic sphere, meaning starting, with the heart or starting with the sacral chakra, moving up through the crown, and then coming back down through the root. One of the things that I see happen a lot for those, and I'm looking at my analytics, I see that the majority of people subscribe to the channel identify as female, according to, kind of those check boxes we all sometimes check off or invited to check off for YouTube's analytics purposes. When you identify in the feminine polarity of this connection, or some people call it the divine feminine or the awake twin, so to speak, although I try not to use those terms, what we can have going on is because the energy can move into the spiritual dimension so quickly, it can move through the third eye and the crown. It can be easy to hang out in that realm for a long period of time, never fully bringing the energy back down and around to the root and the third dimension, and getting really kind of third dimensional about grounding unconditional love in your families, in your work settings, in your home, in the way you set your life up to be unconditionally loving to yourself. We can really kind of get stuck up in that kind of like, let's get readings, let's do spiritual warfare, let's be in the energetic healing and the vibrational reading of the energy at all times, and never really cross the threshold of anchoring the love in the third dimension, which frankly it's a tremendous amount of work. I see a lot of people who identify in the polarity called divine feminine get into a level of inertia or stasis or comfort, really, in letting the connection be spiritual only, and never really doing the kind of like, now you need to go to therapy and deal with the childhood issues. Now you actually need to see a doctor and deal with the hormonal issues that have been a problem your whole life, right? Never really deal with the kind of concretizing of unconditional love behaviorally with themselves and with their world. They kind of stay in the spiritual with it, and let's just perceive what the other is doing and never really deal with the self. I see that happen a lot, where the demand comes from life in a transit just like this, both counterparts in earth signs, to get physical with the love, deal with your life with the love, change your circumstances with the love. But instead of doing that, there's a real kind of like, yeah, the best way I can describe it is just like being a little too comfortable in separation is the best way I can describe it. And so a transit like this comes along, which is an absolute union transit. Look at them in harmony, both in earth signs. But the access point is through both doing the work in the third dimension. And so the invitation here is to close out any cycle in the third dimension that has compromised the way we are dealing with that unconditional love and the way we express it toward ourselves. Taurus is a sign of self-worth and self-esteem, where this lunar eclipse is taking place, where Juno and Jupiter are both speaking to this lunar eclipse. There's an invitation for both counterparts to turn the love inward and put it in the third dimension, where the eyes can behold, wow, that's a person who really loves herself. Look at how she's handled that issue, with her ex-spouse and the co-parenting, or wow, look at how she has, really handled that issue at her job and being underpaid, or wow, look at how, she's really stepped up into loving her physical body in a way no one in her family has done self-love before. This is one of these kind of moments in time where the demand is to take that energy out of the 5D and really concretize it in the 3D. Okay. And certainly, yes, if you're identifying in separation, this makes what I'm kind of speaking to that crowd. But for those of you who identify in some format of union, there's a really beautiful practice from the Gottmans. If you're not familiar with the book titled Seven Principles for Making Marriage Work, it is a beautiful book that talks about some research from a pair of psychotherapists who who created something called a love lab. And inside the love lab, they set up cameras. It was an apartment. They invited couples in for the weekend and observed their behaviors in a longitudinal study. They found after 5 years that there were certain behaviors that couples who stayed together by the 5-year mark exhibited in the course of a 48-hour weekend that were identifiable within the first 10 minutes of watching them interact. And they got so precise with this that when they witnessed these 7 behaviors, they knew right away, okay, this couple is going to make it. And so that book, the research is laid out in that book called The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work by John Gottman, and I forget who the research collaborator was on that, but they've got an entire practice around that where they coach couples and books for singles around this kind of thing as well. And one of the practices out of that body of work is something called turning toward a bid for connection. And when your counterpart makes a bid for connection, maybe expresses that something is challenging them or bothering them from their life, turning toward is a behavior that specifically invites them to share more and connect more deeply. When those bids for connection go unignored or go ignored, when those bids for connection are overlooked, this is one of the signals. They call it the 4 horsemen. This is one of the signals that that relationship will likely not make it. So you can check all of that work out. I actually did an interview with a Gottman coach and a Gottman psychotherapist in the Tools for Union playlist. I'll see if one of you remind me in the comment section. I'll link it below this video if I happen to forget. But she goes through the 7 principles and the 4 horsemen, so you can kind of like shortcut this. And she's a fabulous resource if you're looking for some like long-term coaching to change some patterns and connection for you and your counterpart. But one of the things that's interesting about this full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse, because Taurus deals with self-esteem, self-worth, self-value, with both counterparts speaking to this, and this particular eclipse being about closing out cycles of toxicity, before there is a bid for connection that you can place with a counterpart, there's a real kind of internal self-awareness around our own needs, our own desires, that this lunar eclipse energy is inviting us to have a look at and giving us an opportunity to turn toward ourselves and meet our own needs, be our own heroes before asking a counterpart to do it for us. Yeah. So I really like to see this because it's going to give us an opportunity to really strengthen our relationship with ourselves. And in so doing, in knowing ourselves in this way, it allows us to allow someone to see all of us so that they can love all of us too. So it's an exciting energy. And if, you're kind of struggling with connection or understanding one another, and you just kind of want some overview support with that as a couple, couples readings are available on my website under relationship readings. They're available in 90-minute increments because an hour is just too short for me to work with two people. And they're available for two folks who want to come together to resolve some kind of longer standing patterns of gridlock in their connection. This couples reading will allow you to understand one another and each other's makeup based on the astrology and how you can work with one another's energetic patterns without pathologizing one another. And that'll make turning toward the other much easier because there won't be this question mark around, well, why do they bid for connection in that way? Why are they showing up in that way? It'll be much easier to relax into each other's identity, truly, and own your identity without any make wrong about it. If you want to book that's at kmoonastro.com. Link is below this video. I would love to talk to you and your person if you guys are able to come together. But if you're working solo, that's fine. A personal reading is the best way to work with me if you and your person can't come together. In fact, that's the only way to work with me. In our divine masculine energy fields, there's Jupiter hanging out in Taurus. Jupiter's the planet I read as divine masculine energy. It's the evolved masculine energy. Mars is more of our human masculine energy. The attention is pretty squarely focused on money and self-esteem and self-worth, and the connection between self-worth and basically cash. Jupiter sitting in Taurus, the sign of value, earned income, sign of our desires, where there has been any kind of settling for less in your own internal divine masculine energy fields. This full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse invites us to step up and insist on more life, more abundance, more flow, more ease, more comfort, more money for real. Where our comfort zone has become stifling because we've outgrown it, or enabling because it's not allowing us to grow. It's actually allowing us to stay stuck in some patterns that aren't serving us. This full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse is the invitation to do something new, to get something new, right? And because the comfort zone really that's Taurus. It's all about comfort and the creature comforts that make our life work. Being comfortable isn't a problem. It's when we cling to comfort at the expense of growth. That's Taurus in shadow. Where investment in ourselves or in another, that's Taurus, and that's Taurus in the light, has turned to attachment or clinginess, that's Taurus in shadow. This is our invitation to reevaluate the meaning that we've placed on being connected to certain people, or any projection or transference, and deriving value from quote unquote helping people who maybe didn't even ask for it, or sacrificing for those who never wanted us to sacrifice in the first place, where we have derived some sort of worthiness or significance from putting ourselves in those kinds of positions to make up for feeling unworthy in other areas. This is a moment in time where this kind of lunar eclipse is both exposing that truth back to us and inviting us to set up some new patterns, some new agreements, basically to knock it off. Where we've justified our under-earning as either being noble or being of service, or used it as validation for significance and self-worth. That's a toxic trait for Taurus. This is where, you know, the economy and inflation and the changing economic landscape is really going to catch up with us, where we valued something about ourselves and offered it, but we've either outgrown what we've offered, like, dang, it's exhausting to offer that, it's really draining, or we've outgrown the way it's being received. Like, dang, I've been giving this and giving this, but they're not really getting the value of what I'm delivering anymore. This is the moment where the misalignment will get loud, inviting us to go where we fit next instead of lamenting what no longer works and trying to life support what's truly dead and gone. You get the idea. An area of life is demanding change, likely because we've outgrown the current way it's configured. So it's time to change it, reconfigure it, starting with our own self-worth, self-esteem first. And that is Jupiter in Taurus. Okay. Speaking to this lunar eclipse, that's a closing of a cycle. If you need some help really understanding how and what are the possibilities for reconfiguring certain areas of your life that you may feel kind of locked into, now is the opportunity to book some time with me in my calendar. There's room available in November and early December to talk through these things. I'd love to work with you because this full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse energy is with us through January, 90 days on either side. So while this energy is peaking, is a great time to make the necessary changes, because as this energy comes to a close, if we haven't resolved some of this stuff, we've set ourselves up for a redo to make sure that we get it. And we don't repeat cycles on this channel. We like to do new things. Okay, so let's deal with our divine feminine energy. Okay. In our divine feminine energy, it is the exact same. She's speaking very loudly to the eclipse in Taurus. There's Juno at the 4th degree of Virgo speaking to the lunar eclipse in Taurus. And she's also closing out a cycle specifically in connection. This could be a communication cycle. So no communication could go to communication. Being in communication could move to a timeout. Where there's been no vulnerability, now there's suddenly going to be a lot of vulnerability and transparency. Wherever things have been imbalanced, this is a moment in time where balance is about to get fully restored in some way. Where one person maybe has like flooded the connection with communication, the other person's kind of been overwhelmed by it. You may see that person go, time out. I can't talk right now. I need you to back all the way up in my space from my space, right? We're seeing that kind of thing unfold with an eclipse like this. Number 2, there could also be, I'm seeing with the closing out of imbalanced power dynamics, role reversals in the connection. So the person who, if there has been like someone who's been very invested in the connection, they could move through the cycle and process of this eclipse to being a lot more laissez-faire, a lot less invested, maybe really turning toward themselves, like I was talking about earlier, investing in themselves. And that will, by design, that also shifts the person who's maybe been a bit less invested vibrationally to really looking, wait, where'd you go? You withdrew all your energy. Why aren't you chasing me anymore? To really look and start the process of investing and examining the connection themselves. That kind of role reversal can take place to balance out the connection. For those who are in some level of union or identifying in union in a more traditional sense, this is where we can see The moneymaker or the breadwinner switch roles and become the bread maker or more childcare focused. The person who's been taking care of the household management or the children can switch into more of the breadwinner, moneymaker role out in the world. Seeing that kind of reversal kind of going on in connection as well. And then the third thing I'm seeing change and close out as a cycle in connection where there's been imbalanced power dynamics. Some are closing out their attachment to an identity as twin flames altogether, releasing and integrating the growth and the love and the up level, but releasing the attachments to the construct, the label, or a particular person. There's definitely some release going on around that. And if you missed it, I posted some channeled messages that included bits and pieces about this, among other things, for Twin Flames and the Divine Counterpart Collective recently. You want to check that out. It's on the most recent uploads for the channel. In each connection, the demand for evolution and growth will be different. It's going to be personal. It's going to be unique, to where the flow of love and connection has been thwarted within us. This is where the demand for change will be the loudest. When we change the way we love ourselves, the way we invest in ourselves, everything around us changes, including the way the people we're connected to connect with us. The number one blind spot, and this is key to get, that I'm seeing for counterparts in this energy, both those who identify as in union or those who identify as in separation. The number one blind spot I'm seeing in this energy is believing that someone else needs to change, believing that somehow, some way, we figured it all out. We're just waiting for them to catch up. That the locus of control rests in someone else's changing evolution or in someone else's hands. I promise you, it's not going to be up to someone else. This energy in particular, and you've probably been seeing it because we're in a portal of rapid manifestation, things coming into fruition really fast right now and being mirrored back to us in like hyper speed, like warp speed mirroring going on right now between life and us and people and us. This is a little bit like being inside of a fun house at a county fair or at a circus. You kind of go in and there's like mirrors everywhere and you see all these distorted versions of yourself, really tricking you into thinking that there's more people in the fun house when truly there isn't. There's just us, just you in there. But all these distortions have you thinking there's like tons of different people in there, and there's not. And so I promise you, and it's really hard to take if you're identifying in some level of separation. I really want to say I've been there myself. Once I got to the other side of this and really started to understand there's no one here but me. There's only the way K Moon is treating herself. And all of life is reflecting the way K Moon is treating her dreams, the way K Moon is treating, her value, the way K Moon is treating what she brings to the table and what she offers. There's just that. When I really started to get that and started to take myself seriously and really value who I was in a new way, my connection completely shifted. And so this is part of this kind of, counterparts meeting up in Aries this year energy for all of us collectively. And part of why, I mentioned this in that update that I just talked about, the 2023 to 2027 channeled messages, why I'm not offering twin flame readings for those in separation, because I promise you the answer is not in your person's chart. It's in your chart. The union pathway, the door to getting on that bridge that you have been looking for is 100% in your chart. And an energy like this is only highlighting that. So if you need some support, really understanding, especially for those of you who identify in separation, okay, where is the access point to union again? Like, why is this stuck? Book with me over at kmoonastro.com so that this can be the last or the end of a separation cycle for yourself, and you can really get on that upward union with self spiral and shift the way not just your connection with whomever you identify as your counterpart is rendering for you, but the way all your connections are rendering, your friendships, your family dynamics, all of it. They all shift when we shift. And this is what North Node in Aries is trying to get us to see. Certainly, this lunar eclipse in Taurus about self-worth, self-esteem, self-value, and closing out where we haven't been valuing ourselves. This is the invitation to get off of patterns of non-value, of, non taking ourselves seriously. So, you know where to find me. I would love to work with you. Booking in November and December while this energy is at its peak. And yeah, I love you guys. If this resonated, hit that like button. If you're new, subscribe. I'll be here at the new and the full moon to walk you through it. We've only got full moon in Scorpio. Sorry, new moon in Scorpio, full moon in Gemini, new moon in Sagittarius left. And that's our year, guys. Oh, I think we have a full moon in Cancer, and then that's it. 2023 went by fast, and it was such an honor and a pleasure to share it with you all. And I applaud you each and all of the changes that you're making. It has been a tremendous year for growth and change. Thanks for listening and subscribing, and I will see you in a session soon. Take great care. Bye for now.